Welcome, everyone, to the world-famous Adventurers Club of Los Angeles. My name is Rich Mayfield, member 1211. I'm joined tonight by Cody Bahlau. Thank you for joining us. You're here to talk to us tonight about the epic year you had in 2024.
2024,
Correct?
yeah. First off, thank you for having me. Thank you, Phoebe, for setting everything up. Fantastic dinner tonight, and I really appreciate being here.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you. So first of all, let's start where we always start at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
You're obviously some sort of adventurer, and we're going to find out what kind tonight.
Yeah.
But how did you get started as an adventurer? Like, where'd you start?
Yeah, so I'm from Michigan. My family had a couple of odd businesses growing up. So we had a Western park, so like theme park. So I was a street performer, gunfights, fell off the roof, the water tower. I was a sawmill operator, a blacksmith, all before college. And then I went to the University of Michigan to study geology, and while there, I worked in a dude ranch in Wyoming, took people up in the mountains, riding on horses. We did day rides, overnight pack trips, the whole thing. And after college, I went to the oil and gas industry. So almost 20 years there, all over the world. I rode camels by the pyramids, Machu Picchu multiple times, did the mountain biking, the Death Road, and that wasn't even about work. That was just fun.
Yeah.
So so we worked all over. And then in 2020, I went to Columbia University, Lamont Doherty's Earth Observatory in New York City, and I joined their research vessel.
So tell us, so it sounds like you're very much an opportunist, and the jobs that you've had leading up to the job you have now
Sure.
have provided you an opportunity
Yep.
to do a lot of cool stuff, which I love that. I think all of us want that opportunity for our work to take us places and do cool stuff, right?
Yeah. I've been extremely fortunate to be able to travel with the company, but then also when there to take some time off. When we were in New Zealand, I took 2 weeks, camper van, South Island. You have to be present where you're at and take advantage of sort of where your location is.
So tell us what you do for Columbia University now.
Yeah. So I'm the chief science officer on board the boat. So sort of similar to Star Trek, you have the captain, the chief engineer, and all the ratings below them. And I work with the technicians. So I'm the lead technician on board, and they're my team. And I work with the scientist, the researcher, the professor who comes on board the boat and wants to accomplish their scientific goals. So I'm the liaison between them, the technical team, the marine crew, the office staff, and I help them, hopefully, achieve their goals of what they want to do.
So Columbia University owns a boat. I'm guessing it's the RV Atlantis, right?
So in the picture that you're seeing, the RV Atlantis is a boat from WHOI, Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute. So the boat that I work on is the Marcus G. Langseth, and I have a video, sort of a drone flyover that we can look at.
Okay.
So Columbia, Lamont Doherty has had several boats throughout the years. This is just the latest boat that we've had. So the Vima would be one, the Marcus, the Ewing is another. And
What are these tentacles we're looking at here?
Yeah, so in the video, so what you're looking at here are the seismic source. So sort of our bread and butter in the university world is long offset seismic. So we tow a cable behind us that has hydrophones in it. What we just saw is the air source, or the noise. We produce the noise, it goes down, reflects off the subsurface. We measure the reflection, and with transit time, we can make a map of the interior of the ocean. So as we can see, we're flying in on the boat now. So it's 71 meters long, 17 meters wide. So I had a quick look on Google Earth. This building is 17 meters wide by 40 meters long. So imagine this building a little bit longer with 50 of your closest friends for 40 to 50 days at sea.
And all your favorite toys.
And
right?
all your favorite toys. So right now we're looking at the starboard side of the boat. You can see the A-frame. That's where we're going to do dredging and cores. We're going to deploy the rosette for water samples. We're coming up on the bow now. Of course, the captain is up on the bridge. That's all the glass windows you can see above the blue line is the bridge. So the captain and all the bridge offices are there. We're going to come around to the port side here in a second. You're going to see the FRB, that's the fast rescue boat. In case something does happen, we can launch that. You're also going to see the seismic or the science workboat, so we can deploy that, go out and pick equipment up, deploy equipment. And then the big sort of wing thing you see on the side of it here on the port side, that's called the barrow vane. So we deploy that, and it's just like an airplane wing. That gives us lift in the water to pull the cables apart if we have more than one cable in the water. So we can deploy up to 4, and that's called 3D seismic when we do that. Yeah.
So does this boat have a mission? like we all remember from Star Trek?
It's a good question. Yep.
To explore,
So-
everybody's thinking it in their heads right now.
It is to explore the unknown. So 27% of the seabed has been mapped. The rest is just sort of a guess. So for example, when you look at Google Earth, you look at the ocean basins and you see some areas that are clear and some are a little bit fuzzy. The fuzzy areas, they do that based on a satellite measurement with gravity. So it's called satellite altimetry. And they look at the slight variations in the level of the ocean, and with that, they can predict features on the seafloor. Now, of course, this is a real rough estimate of what's down there, and it takes research boats like the Marcus G. Langseth, like boats down in San Diego at Scripps, at Woods Hole, to be able to go out and with the EM-122 multi-beam measure the seafloor. So,
Interesting.
yeah.
So how often is this boat deployed, so to speak? I was a Navy guy, so it's all about deployments,
It's all
right?
about
How
deployments.
often is this thing out on the ocean?
Yeah, so last year we were in the high 200s, so 270, 280 days. Yep. The rotation is about 4 to 5 weeks offshore. It depends on the expedition, it depends on the cruise. Some are a little bit shorter, but sort of that 5 weeks is our limit. We go out, so what happens is, let's say you're a professor. You want to study something over the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. So you put a proposal into the National Science Foundation, say that I want to look at A, B, and C. I'm going to have a science team of 15 people from undergraduates up to postdocs. The NSF looks at that proposal, they'll put it out to peer review, and if it gets accepted, then you'll get money or essentially vessel time. So you'll get 4 weeks to go out and perform whatever science you want, well, not what you proposed, of course, in that area. Yep, so that's sort of how it works. And then we go out with different science crews every time, and we do different work. So, for example, we were offshore California here a couple weeks ago. We worked from San Diego up to Monterey Bay. And right now, the boat is down in the Galapagos Islands doing some work down there.
And so when you're in the high 200s, the boat is in the high 200s.
Yep.
What's your shift look like on that? Because like right now, you're sitting here with us, which is great.
Right now I'm with you.
You live in Denver.
I live in Denver, yep.
Or close by. But the boat's somewhere out,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So what does your deployment schedule look like?
So we do usually 6 months a year, 180, 200 days is about what we try to aim for. Anything longer, burnout starts to creep in. So I have sort of a counterpart that we switch back and forth. Some of the time at sea are transits. So we'll only go down to one technician on board during that time. They'll run the sonars, the EM-122 multi-beam, the sub-bottom profiler, some of the other instrumentations that we run on transits. But it's usually when the science team are on board, that's when we scale up. So we go from 4 to 12 technicians on board, depending on what type of mission it is.
So basically, anytime this thing's going anywhere,
Yep.
you got your instruments.
That's right.
So you got them out surveying, basically. Like
some of
chances
them.
are we're driving across something that's never been surveyed before, so
Yeah.
might as well have it out.
It's an extremely high chance. Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. So we're going to have the EM-122 multi-beam running. We'll have the sub-bottom profiler going. We'll have the ADCP. It's a current profiler. We've got a couple weather stations that we have up and going, and that data gets piped into NOAA for all the weather sort of stations around the world. We have a couple, we have a wet wall, we call it. So we take water from 6 meters down, and it gets piped through, uncontaminated. And we have a couple seabird instrumentation that we have piped into that. So we get temperature, we get salinity, and things like that as we go, as we transit.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So wherever this thing goes, it's collecting data.
We have data everywhere.
So talk to us about the main instrument. You said it was the EM-122. What was that?
Well, yeah. So that's our sonar instrument or the multi-beam instrument we use. But what the boat is sort of famous for in the UNOLS fleet. So if you haven't heard UNOLS, so UNOLS is the University National Oceanographic Laboratory System. So it's all the university boats in the U.S. and there's lots of them. Some are global class, some are regional class. So Scripps down in San Diego has a couple. Washington has one. Fairbanks in Alaska has a boat. So all these different university systems they have boats, and some of them specialize in different things. So, for example, for the Atlantis, they're going to have Elvin on board. So that's what they're famous for. What we do, our main bread and butter is seismic. So we do long offset 2D and 3D seismic. So what's seismic? So if we want to make an image of what's below the seabed, to look at the structure, to look at the fault system, subduction zones, et cetera, oil and gas uses it to look for traps. So we tow a cable behind the boat. So the cable's 15 kilometers long, or 9 miles. So to give
my
reference, to give reference from this point on the stage, it goes to Burbank. So it's quite long that we're towing behind us, yeah. So at the end of it, we're gonna have a tail buoy that's gonna have a GPS, that's gonna have a radar reflector, AIS. So when the bridge is talking to other vessels, because you can try to imagine 9 miles behind you is quite a ways,
Right.
but now put a turn into that. So it's hard for, well, it's even
So
hard
it
for me.
shows up on AIS as its own thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've been doing it for a long time, and it's even hard for me to visualize. Sometimes our tail buoy is ahead of us on a turn as we come around. That's how.
How does that show up on their AIS in terms of like, like I'll just cut this guy's stern.
Yeah.
But like you essentially have something on tow.
Exactly. So it's MGL tail buoy. So Marcus G. Langseth tail buoy is how it appears on AIS. And the bridge, of course, is in communication with the boats and explaining where it's at. Now, the streamer usually tows, it's a little bit different depending on the geophysical goals, but let's say it's around 10 to 12 meters below the surface. And we attach pieces of equipment on there that allow us to steer the streamer vertically in the water column. So we can take it to surface or we can take it down to 30 meters. So ideally, if something is coming, the bridge contacts us, hey, we've got a boat coming on the port side, it's going 5 knots, we can't get a hold of them. We'll dive the streamer down with the idea that the boat can then go over the top of the streamer. The problem is that streamer comes up at the tail buoy. So if they're closer to the tail buoy, there's a chance that we could catch the boat or they could catch us.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So you were about to explain before we talked about the AIS how this actually collects data. How does the seismic collect data? Because generally, if you think of a seismograph, you're thinking about something buried in the ground.
That's right.
Yeah. So how does this work?
Yeah. So in that example, you're going to have geophones, which actually come in contact with the ground. So we have in the streamer, we have hydrophones. So they're spaced every 12.5 meters. A group of hydrophones, the grouping is every 12.5 meters along the streamer. So the streamer's 15K. And then, so we deploy that. It takes, the first time we do it, it could take about 16 to 18 hours to deploy it. So we usually have to do a few things, some maintenance. We have new crew on board. So that's how long it takes to get fully out. And then after we deploy what we saw in the beginning of the video, the seismic source. So it's essentially an air gun is what we do. So it's 2,000 PSI and 6,600 cubic inches. So it makes quite a boom. So when you're in shallow water, you can actually feel the boat vibrate. If it's a hard bottom, shallow water, you know what's going on. In the deeper water, soft bottom, not so much. You have to pay attention to it. But what happens is based on the geophysical requirements of what we're trying to do, the seismic source shoots the air into the water at every, let's call it 50 meters. The noise goes down, reflects off the different layers in the rock, and then reflects back to the streamer, and then we measure that as it comes back to the streamer. And with the different processing software, they can then make an image of the rocks below the water. To give you an idea, on a big oil and gas survey, it could take 1.5 years just to process the data. It's that much.
So I'm trying to figure out what makes this seismic, and tell me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like the thing that makes this seismic is basically the frequency of the source, right? You're doing a big pulse, as opposed to traditional sonar would be like a ping, a different frequency or whatever. So is the frequency of that source basically what puts it into the seismic range?
It's the frequency. So we balance the seismic source. So we have different sizes of the air chambers.
Right.
So we can sort of make a signature that we're looking for. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, the frequencies, it's quite a large spectrum, and it's the sort of the power of when the air guns go off.
And that allows you to see more composition of the bottom as opposed to just where the bottom is. Because like a higher frequency, like with traditional sonar,
that's right.
You're basically just seeing the bottom. Like there's the bottom, you know, but you're not seeing the composition.
That's right. So on board we have the Knudsen 3260 chirp, 3.5 kilohertz, and we can see the bottom and maybe 20 to 50 meters down, depending on the sediment. With seismic, we can see kilometers down. So we can see the Pacific plate going onto the North American plate type.
So that boom, that chamber, the 2,000 PSI, that literally reflects kilometers down.
Kilometers.
That's insane. That's pretty cool.
Yep.
It reminds me of Jurassic Park, when they had that big shotgun thing.
It's true.
That's basically it. And this is why you're involved, right? As a geologist and a this is your thing, seismic, right?
Yep. So I came from the oil and gas world. It's the same technology, the same equipment that they use. It's on a bit of a smaller scale, but we use it for science. So we're looking at the faults and the transform faults of subduction zones, things like that. Around
What
volcanoes.
happens if you find a bunch of oil on this thing?
We're usually
sell
not
that
in
information.
We're usually not working in areas where it's going to be, but because we are funded by the NSF, all the data after a couple years is public, so anybody could look at the data. That's it.
Do the oil companies scrape that data?
They do scrape it. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. There are a few companies
Make
out
sure
there
they don't miss anything.
just to make sure they sell it in a data package. Yep.
That's interesting.
Yep.
Okay, so I think everybody's got a good idea about how you're Spock on this boat.
Yeah.
Right, which is pretty cool. So tell us about this year that you had, because this is cool in and of itself. But tell us about 2024.
Yeah. So it's more sort of like a year as a person who works on a research boat. So there's quite a few people who sort of do what I do. Everybody kind of comes at it a different way. So this is just my example of what a year looks like. So I started off the year in Colorado. I did the Manitou Incline, a little teaser for the start of the year. So it's an old
workout,
huh?
Little workout.
Little workout. Yep. So it's an old cable car route outside of Colorado Springs. So in less than a mile, it goes up 2,000 vertical feet. So it's a huge staircase, is what it is. Yeah. And usually the people start out looking like an Instagram model, and then halfway through they're crawling up the stairs.
Why'd you do that? Isn't there cable? That's why you put the cable there, man.
That's a good question. Yeah, just a little amuse-bouche for the year.
Yeah.
So and then so after that I went to San Diego here in California. Woods Hole was nice enough with their vessel, the Atlantis. So they brought not all, but they brought quite a few technicians from around the country onto their vessel, and they gave us an opportunity to network, to talk, to learn little tips and tricks, to learn maybe equipment that people don't have on their vessels. So I did that for 3 or 4 days here in the Channel Islands. It's a fantastic opportunity. And then from there, the real work started. So I flew to Norfolk, Virginia. We're at the NOAA dock there in Norfolk, and we started mobilization for 3 cruises. So you can imagine multiple semis were coming in, multiple people. So labels were a thing. So everything had to be labeled. Like we've all planned expeditions, small and large, and preparation is key, especially when they were loading their gear in Norfolk to use it down south of Cape Town.
So you got 3 essential groups that are coming on board, and they're all loading their stuff on in Virginia for the next deployment.
Yeah, for the next several months. Yeah. And even within the groups, they didn't even know each other yet too much. So it was quite an interesting feat. So we had tons of pallets, palletainers. We had just about everything you could imagine filled up. And then from there, we sailed for the first time that year. MGL 2401 was the cruise number. We went from Norfolk to Cape Verde.
I think we have a slide of that, right?
That's it right there. Yep. So 2,900.
Is that your actual transit, or is that just a line? Because there's a little blip on there.
That was our transit. Yep. So we went around.
Like you actually put the points on there?
What's that?
Did you actually put the points on there?
No. So yeah.
That's just start and end.
Yeah. So we have a program that tracks where the boat goes, and then we put that onto Google Earth. So that is it. That's it.
That's a pretty straight track.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Great circular. Yeah.
So all the tracks from 2008 when the vessel launched for Columbia, we have all the tracks. So it's just over 700,000 kilometers right now that we've traveled for science. Yeah.
What's the speed on that? That's
so our max speed is around 10 knots, 10 and a half. If we're going downhill, maybe 11. Wind and seas behind us. Yeah. Hold on to your hats. Yeah.
Slow.
Yeah. So we had the sonars going the whole time. And how it works is, as long as we're in international waters, outside of a country's EEZ, we run the sonars, unless we have permissions to run it in their waters. So we had them going the whole time. Little interesting event happened on the way. So we had some water intrusion. So we had 4 or 5 days out. We had some rough seas, 4 to 5 meters, a little choppy. And one of the doors wasn't dogged down well enough. And the captain called about midnight and said, hey, we got water leaking into one of the compartments below. So we went up on deck and had a look into the compartment that we thought maybe it was coming from. And sure enough, there was 6 to 8 inches of water sloshing around inside. Now, at no time was there really any concern of vessel stability or integrity, but it was in our work compartment. It was not great. So there was some some offshore language used. I won't repeat.
You had a video of it, right?
Yeah. We got a video. I won't repeat what was said, but some offshore language. Here it is. Here.
Oh, we lost the audio.
So it was a little work.
That's kind of a bummer.
There's a little work. Yep.
How do you dewater that compartment? You
Well,
have pumps or what? You
pumps,
throw a pump in there?
Pumps, shop vacs, buckets. Yeah.
Start with a pump and shop vac it for 3 hours.
It
or
was
whatever.
all hands on deck. It was all hands on deck thing. Yeah.
So what was it? It was just a hatch that wasn't dogged down?
It was a hatch that wasn't dogged down. Yeah, we were in port.
Boo, whose
and
fault
it
was that?
Well, it was a door. It was a door that's not used very much. You know, it's sort of an emergency exit type door. And what we've seen is some new people on board would get confused. And the door to one of the ones that we use all the time is right next to it. So sometimes some people get confused, try to open the wrong door, realize it's the wrong door, and then leave it undogged. Yeah. So anyways, we caught it, and
Should be part of the briefing.
yeah, well,
If you undog a hatch, you need to leave it how it was found, right?
the door's not there anymore. Yeah. So
Oh, yeah?
we re-engineered the space. We have a much better setup now. But yeah. So it was a 12-day transit from Norfolk to Cape Verde. We had that little incident, and after that, the seas were decent. We went over the Atlantic Ridge, the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. So I had a little video there of sort of looking at the EM122 data. So the red circle there is over the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, and sort of in the picture here, you can see sort of the clear ridged area, and the fuzzy area is next to us. So that fuzzy area is what I was talking about before. Well, that's actually not mapped.
This is the top right.
That's the top right, exactly.
Okay.
Yep. So that's not mapped. And when we plan our transits, so we use the JEPCO database. Lamont has a GeoMap app that we use to look at the best transits. So we try to get as much new data as we can, but within reason. We can't sail 500 miles out of our way. But if we can tweak it a little bit to get new data, we definitely do.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yep.
So can you give us the significance of the Mid-Atlantic Ridge from a geologist perspective?
Yeah, I mean, this is just a spreading zone here in the Atlantic. So, as we've all looked at maps before, Brazil tucks nicely into Africa there, except with the fault system there, so it's a divergent fault in the center there. So it's spreading, and we're getting new seafloor. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So no mountains, just kind of like ripples.
Yeah, if you can go back to the start of the video, it's actually a bit of a depression there. You can see it in the colors. If I remember right, the blue is so the blue is a little bit deeper. The yellow reddish is a little bit higher. So you can see there's a bit of a depression there. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And we have this going anytime we're at sea. We usually have the multi-beam going unless there's some reason that we can't.
Right.
Yep.
And you said one of the reasons would be if you're in someone's exclusive economic zone.
That's right.
Because basically they think you're spying on their oil.
Yeah. I mean, they can't control the data. There's maybe something that they don't want to be publicized. So once again, because we're publicly funded, all of our data goes into a database that anybody can access. So this goes into R2R, we call it, the rolling deck to repository. And this helps the mission of, for example, Seabed 2030. I don't know if anybody's talked about it before, but Seabed 2030 is sort of a goal. It's a global goal to map all of the oceans by 2030.
No way.
Yeah. It's not going to happen. But it's a good way to bring sort of coverage and bring attention to the fact that only 20% of the oceans have been mapped.
Right. You mentioned, you kind of skimmed over it real quick, but I thought it was interesting. You said that there's some sort of app that basically shows you what has been mapped.
Yeah.
So that you can, if you're doing a transit,
that's right,
just out in the middle of nowhere,
yep,
you can decide you can go over here because this we're missing a spot over here.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's part of the 2030, or that's one of the main tools you use to promote that.
That's yeah. So that's run out of Lamont Doherty, that particular app where I work, Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory. And it has, so that's just one of the layers it has for scientists and for anybody in general. It's a very powerful tool to see different type of data sets that are available within it. We use it primarily to see what the seabed coverage looks like. But yep. So when we transit, we always look at that and map accordingly.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So where did you go next? You did this transit?
So from there, we went to Cabo Verde, or Cape Verde, which are some islands off the west coast of Africa there. They were found by the Portuguese. They were uninhabited. Nobody was living there in the 1500s, or sorry, the 15th century, so 1400s. And it was sort of a main trading route for the age of exploration. And so we were there. We went to Mindelo. So as we came in, there's a lighthouse, the Dom Louis Lighthouse, just as we were coming in, built in 1882. It was sort of up on a rock, a promontory peak as we came into port. I got a picture of it there, but it was quite nice, especially for anybody who's been at sea a long time, to come in and see that lighthouse and know you're going to be going home in a couple days. It was quite nice. So,
Do you have a picture of that?
yeah.
Let's get to that picture, because that was a pretty cool lighthouse. Pretty historic, right?
Yeah. It's real nice coming in to see it. And
We getting there? Phoebe? Was this Cape Verde?
This is Cape Town, actually. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I think it's probably back a couple pictures. But yeah, I mean, it was quite interesting to see, and it's a different culture as well. So it has that Portuguese culture; they speak Portuguese there, and then it has quite the African influence as well. Of course, it's just offshore Africa, so it's an interesting place. It's an interesting place to be. Very dry, deserty, rocks
That's the lighthouse,
exposed.
right?
That's the lighthouse right there. Yep. So you can see the bow or the front of the boat as we came into Mindelo, and that lighthouse is just there on that rocky crag.
It seems like that's a rock that needs a lighthouse.
If you're going to put a lighthouse, you'd be there.
That's the one.
That's
yeah,
where I
that's
want
the one
that
you need to
lighthouse.
mark, right?
Yeah, exactly right. Yep. Yeah.
So where did you go from here?
So from there, I went home. So that was time for me to crew change out.
You flew out.
Yeah. I flew out. So you fly to Lisbon, and then Lisbon to wherever you're going from there is the main port. So the boat from there did some scientific work.
And this is what you arrived home to?
Yeah, that was a couple months after I got home. Yeah, so just before I was actually going back to work, we had 4.5 to 5 feet of snow that fell, and I actually ended up having to dig out before I could go to work down in Cape Town. So I was hoping that the plow would come by. The plow just said no, and so I got the shovel and started digging. Yeah.
And then off to Cape Town.
And then off to Cape Town. Yeah, so in between, I did spend some time at Woods Hole at Hui. Fantastic institution. I don't know if you've had anybody in the past come talk about Hui and Woods Hole and what they do.
Not specifically, but I'm familiar.
It's fantastic, yeah. I was dealing with Marshall there. So I was doing a little bit of training on the CTD. It's an instrument, conductivity, temperature, and depth, and the water sampling bottles and things like that. So seismic is my background, but we're getting more and more into the oceanographic work. So I went there for a couple days, and then then we went down to Cape Town. So we met the boat when it came into port. We had some good time in Cape Town. I don't know if people have been before, but it's a fantastic place to go. Down at the waterfront, we were eating ostrich fillets, taking trips up to Table Mountain.
Table Mountain was the last slide there, right?
Yeah, it's just an absolute amazing place to be. Anytime we come into port after a long journey, especially the crew who was on before, you want to run to port, go to libraries, and churches, and museums. That's
as sailors are known for.
Yes. That's usually where you go.
Their voracious appetite for books.
The books, literature. And so it was a fantastic time. And we sailed after that. We went south of Cape Town, south of the Cape of Good Hope, and we recovered some moorings. So a year before we got there, they deployed 2 moorings, 4,000-ish meters long. And so they're on the bottom. They have some instrumentation along the cable. And what they're doing is right down the east coast of Africa, sort of between Madagascar and the continent there. There's a current. You can almost see it with the red arrows here. Is the Algulas current. And what they're measuring is they want to see when that spins off, the eddies, they spin off into the South Atlantic. And that's called the Algulas leakage. And they want to see how that affects sort of the South Atlantic. The water's warmer, the salinity is a little bit different. And we were studying something in the Cape Cauldron Basin, and that's what they were looking at. So they were down for a year measuring these leakage eddies, and we recovered the moorings. I got a couple pictures. Oh, there's one on deck there. So they've got these yellow balls, which are the floats, it's sort of a glass ball, and that's us recovered on deck. That's us doing our Hollywood selfie. You remember that one from Brad Pitt and Ellen a few years ago? That was famous.
Yep.
Yeah, that's us doing that, and that's some of the science team. That's the lead researcher we had on board, Dr. Lisa Beal. Yeah, so we did that for about a week.
These moorings, they're recording. They're not transmitting live data.
Yep, just recording.
So if you don't pull them back, you don't get the
the
data.
Yeah, that's right.
Do you ever have an instance where one of these things, like you go to it and It's not there.
So the moorings, no, but we do it with the OBSs. We lose some of that. And once we get into a little bit more, I can explain what the OBSs are. But yeah, we lose them sometimes. So that's not good. Yeah. So this is us. This is us a little bit later in Namibia. So basically, we spent a week offshore. We were coming into Cape Town. That time of year, you get the strong, what they call them, like the Cape Doctor winds or something like that flow through Cape Town in the sort of the winter. It was called the Doctor winds because it would essentially blow the fresh air in back in the day. So we had trouble getting into port, but we eventually did. We changed out the science team, and then we sailed north to Walvis Bay, Namibia. So along the way, we went past the famous sand dunes in Namibia. I'm not going to pronounce it correctly, but it's the Namib Nan Kluft sand dunes or national park. And it's the amazing sand dunes that we've all probably seen on Discovery Channel or National Geographic. It's the skeleton coast with the dunes come right down to the ocean. So we sailed past that to Walvis Bay, where we picked up the next science team. We were there for a couple days, and we sailed offshore Namibia to do their work. And they were looking at nitrogen oxide levels in the water. So a little bit of an incident happened. So as we all probably have traveled all around the world, we know how it is sometimes that you can dot every I and cross every T with your permits and your paperwork, and you can have everything which you think is correct, but then you blink your eye and then it's not correct, or at least in the eyes of the authorities that matter. So we had all of our work permits correct. We sailed off. We started doing work for a couple days, and we got a note from the Namibian government that one of their agencies wasn't happy with it, and we couldn't work anymore. So,
And how far off the coast are you?
So we were working anywhere from 50 miles to 300 miles. So it was a pretty big footprint of our research area. We were doing.
But international waters.
It was international waters eventually, but originally no, it was in their EEZ. So that's
Right, but isn't like your work in the EEZ, because it's not commercial, isn't it kind of a courtesy that you play nice with them? What's the deal?
well, it's a good question. We like to be as conservative as possible. We work with the State Department. So if they would like us out of their EEZ, then we leave the EEZ.
Right. I just think about because in the Navy,
Yeah.
you sail 13 miles off the coast,
Yeah.
and you've got all your sensors up.
That's right,
That's
yeah.
the point.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. And you guys are scientists, and you're like 50 miles off, and you're like, I understand if you were collecting for oil or if you were, surveying fish for like some shadow fishing fleet or whatever.
Sure,
But
sure.
So it's just you guys being pretty conservative and
Absolutely.
playing nice with them to avoid incident.
Absolutely. Yep. Yep.
Because if it was that Greenpeace, what's the Greenpeace boat, the Sea Shepherd?
that's
they'd
one
be
of them,
at
yeah.
12.5 nautical
Yeah.
miles too, right?
Yeah.
And they're doing whatever the hell they want.
Yeah, we don't. It's as conservative as you can get.
So what happened when your paperwork was challenged and they said stop
Well,
working?
it's a
What'd
good
you guys
question.
do?
Yeah, so we got the call from the office. We had to bring everybody together, the science team, the lead researcher. We had that conversation. We have to leave their waters. We have to go to international waters. Hopefully, this can be resolved in the time, because remember, they only have a small time window. So no matter what happens within that window, that's the data they can get.
Yeah.
So if a week goes by, 2 weeks go by, well, that's less data.
Is there some guy in the science team like me that's like, who cares? Let's do it.
No. They were all understanding. Of course, there were some tears. You have to imagine that some people, this is a year, 2 years they've been waiting
Yeah, it's
for
a huge process to get out.
Huge process.
Yeah, the grant, all that work. Yeah.
This is people who this is going to be their PhD project. They've been counting on this data to then get their PhD.
And some bureaucrat just got something.
Who
did
knows?
A bureaucrat thing.
Who knows? Yeah, we've all seen it in
That's interesting.
different parts of the world. Yeah. So we sailed out into the international waters. We continued doing the work. So we did that one picture showed the rosette. So those gray bottles
Wait,
on the side.
that was back on the A-frame.
That was back on the A-frame, that
Yeah,
picture
that
there.
one.
Yep. So the vertical, sort of darker gray bottles, that's for taking water samples. Those are Niskin bottles, 10 liters. We have 24 of them on the rosette. And we also have an instrument package that takes temperature, conductivity, which you can then convert to salinity, oxygen sensors, PAR sensors, which is a light sensor. So all sorts of different sensors that we can mount to it. It's modular.
And you just dip that thing down?
And it goes down. Yep. So it goes. Here we're working at a couple thousand meters, but it can go down to 6,000 meters.
That's a lot of cable.
It's a lot of cable. Yep. Yeah. It's a 322 diameter, 0.322. So it's a smallish cable.
0.322
0.322
inches?
Inches. Yep. Inches. Yeah. Couple conductors. so we can then run the instrumentation. I saw in some of your cabinets, you have the shrunken cups. So we also do the cups. So the science team, we have a whole bin of Sharpies that they decorate the cups, cruise numbers, little pictures, octopuses, and then we put them in a sort of a laundry bag and we send them down.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And the other picture that we saw, that's something else we were doing. That's called a multi-core. So when you take, that's it right there, yep. So when you take a normal core of the sea sediment, so it can be quite violent, the core sort of rams into the sediment.
This thing just drops.
Just drops in.
It's like a pile driver.
That's
whatever.
it, exactly right, yep. And when you do that, you sort of, that top layer, that top sensitive layer of the water contact with the ground can get destroyed, as you can imagine. And some scientists want that. They want the fluff. So this instrument is a multi-core, and it goes down just like the Apollo lunar lander. You can see sort of the legs as it comes out of the water there, quite the hero shot. And as it settles down, and then it triggers these bottles that you can see on the other screen, and those bottles just settle down into that fluff, and we can get about 30 to 40 centimeters of that of the sort of sediment and then that water contact level. Yeah. So we did that as well.
Nice and gentle.
Nice and gentle. Yep. Yeah.
So we left off in Namibia. You're doing a round the world tour, right?
Well, the Atlantic.
And every time you stop and you get off, you get to do something cool.
Well, yeah. So we didn't get to do.
You don't get to do something cool. You force yourself to do something cool, right?
Well, we didn't get to do something fun there. So we had sort of a desert expedition all set up. We were going to get in the morning. We were going to go out in the sand dunes. They had big platters of food. We were going to do some sand dune boarding, snowboarding, sand dune boarding. Not quite sure what it's called. But wind and seas you can't control. So we get in, and there was fog that morning. So we couldn't get in until later that afternoon, and we sort of missed our window of what we could and couldn't do before the science team arrived. Yeah. So because we couldn't go into Namibia because of the permit problem, we then sailed back down to Cape Town, and we got the science team off there. So yeah, a little bit of a hiccup there. So we had 2 local Namibian scientists on board with us, but one, because we left out of Walvis Bay and we're going to go back to Walvis Bay, she didn't bring her passport. So we had a bit of a snafu, and we had her friend run her passport to a mailing agency. They then sent it down to the ship's agent down in Cape Town, and just as we were pulling in, she was able to get her passport to go back home. So we changed out the science team in Cape Town. We brought on food, of course, equipment, supplies, fuel. We also got 3 UNOLS mate interns on board. So UNOLS UNOLS is the University National Oceanographic Laboratory Systems. So they have a nice program called the Mate Intern Program, where early career scientists, people just out of school, people who want a career transition, can apply for this internship, and they can join the boat. And so we had 3 of them join in Cape Town, and we sailed from Cape Town to New York City. So 6,800 nautical miles.
Was this considered a transit or training?
It was a transit. Yep, transit. But during the transit, that's when the time of sort of the unsung hero work gets done. So everybody likes the pictures of the new species. Everybody likes the new data, the hero glory moments. But as we all know, when we're planning for an expedition, that work, the peaking of Everest doesn't get done without all the work that goes beforehand. So during these transits, that's when we try to stock up on interns, technicians, to do all the maintenance work, to do maintenance on the seismic equipment, to do your computer upgrades, to even come down and polish tables and sweep, and that's where all that work gets done, as we sail north. So that's what we had the interns doing, myself and them, as we sailed north. Of course, we went across the equator. Oh, look at that, yeah. We went across the equator.
This is your shellback?
That's the shellback ceremony, yep. For those who don't know, so if you haven't crossed the equator, you're a pollywog, and if you have crossed, you're a shellback.
So are you running since you're the head science officer, or is that below Spock?
So no. I'm definitely involved. I'm not King Neptune. I won't reveal too many secrets of the deep, but for those, like I said, who don't know, are pollywogs. So you have to be assembled. You have to have your charges read against you, drinking white wine with red meat, for putting a metric tool in an imperial drawer. And then once your charges are read, you then have to go through the perilous journey to find King Neptune's court and be held accountable in front of the court. And that's as far as I'm
So
going to go.
who's King Neptune on this boat?
It changes.
Yeah?
Yeah. So
I feel like that's a good role for you, though, right?
it could be. Yeah.
You might have been Neptune a couple times.
No, not.
No, never have.
No,
or never divulged.
No, not yet. Well, you don't want to say too many secrets. But you can see I was dressed up there. I have a mop for a beard. My sword is,
That's a
white.
new mop, right?
That's a new mop. Yep. And then my sword is, on a whiteboard, it has that little trim to put your markers and
Yeah.
whatnot. Well, we have a whiteboard without a trim now because that was that was my sword. And so the journey went well. It was a fantastic time. I'll probably never see seas so nice for so long as I live. It was fantastic voyage the whole way. And we came into New York City, past the Statue of Liberty, back home for the boat. So the boat hadn't been to New York in 9 years before this.
Wow.
Yep. We travel all over the place. We passed the Statue of Liberty. I think we got a picture of it here. There it is. Yeah. And under the Brooklyn Bridge and into the Brooklyn Navy Yards. So we did a couple weeks worth of shipyard work there. We brought some show and tell from campus, came down to see the boat, never even seen it before. And at that time, I went home.
Very cool.
Yeah. And then I was only home for a couple days, and then I started my next trip. This one's a personal trip. So I did the Camino de Santiago, but this time from Lisbon up to Santiago de Compostela. So in 2015, I did the French Way, which is sort of the OG, the original one that everybody talks about. You start in southern France, you sort of wind your way through northern Spain, end up in Santiago de Compostela. This time I started in Lisbon. There was a lot less people. It took about 4 weeks, and it was a fantastic trip. Yeah, really good.
Nice little side excursion, right?
Nice little side excursion.
It takes 4 weeks. How many miles is it?
So it's 400 miles. So about 100 miles a week. Like any sort of long distance trail, your first couple days aren't going to be that many.
Yeah, 100 miles a week is solid.
Yeah. But the first couple days was 10 miles ish a day, and then by the end, I was trail.
How much were you carrying?
So not much. So the Camino de Santiago was fantastic because you don't really need to carry
No
much.
tent, no food, maybe a bottle of water in your clothes, right?
Bottle of water, and then each night you're having wines or a glass of wine, olives, maybe some cheese and bread. It's very civilized. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. So along the way, passed by Roman aqueducts, Roman bridges. They're still using bridges that are 2,000 years old. I don't know what the lifespan of a bridge in LA is, but it's not much in Colorado. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So that's the bridge coming into Brooklyn, or that's the boat coming into Brooklyn there.
That's cool.
So
that must have felt good, bringing that boat back home after 9 years, right?
Oh, definitely.
How
Yeah.
long have you been attached to this ship?
For 5 years, since 20.
Okay.
Yeah. So not as long as some of the crew, but longer than some.
Who is it? Is there someone that's been on the boat since Columbia has owned it, or?
Yeah. So originally the boat was built in '91 by an oil and gas company, Western Geophysical. They purchased it, I think, 2006, 2008. It was done with its full refit. So our captain, Captain Mark Landau, is one of the captains we have on board. So he's been with Columbia, I think, 30 years now. So he was definitely the entire life of this vessel and some of the life of the boat before. So he's been on board a long time.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
You got a Captain Landau, huh?
Yeah, Captain Landau. Very nice guy. Yep. This is the main cathedral in Lisbon. So this is sort of the official start of the pilgrimage. Mm-hmm. And you head north from here. So the first sort of a half of the journey up until Porto, you don't see too many people. It's not as popular. But once you get to Porto, Portugal, you cross the river there, and then you really start to see a lot more people as they come.
Do you kind of group up with a group of people as you're going?
Everybody does it a little bit different. Yeah, so you can group into sort of a group of friends. You can sort of leapfrog people. So you meet a couple from Ukraine. You see them at the cafe in the morning. You continue hiking. All of a sudden they pass you, and it goes like that for a couple days until finally you get out of sync, and then you see more people.
You did this solo though, right?
Solo. Yep. Exactly.
Only way to go.
It was fun. Yeah. You meet a lot of people, different cafes, different festivals. So one of the pictures has a small horse here. So it was a hot day. I don't even remember the town. It was somewhere south of Porto. It was hot. I've got my expedition hat on. I've got my poles clicking, full internal. It's so hot. I come up and over this little hill, and it was, 30 to 40 local women, all in traditional dress, barefoot, walking on the road with little umbrellas. It almost brought me to a stop. And, so as I pass by them, they're all waving and laughing and smiling, talking Portuguese, of course. I don't know it. So I passed them by thinking, wow, that's unusual. And a little bit farther down the road, there's a whole herd of horses with guys in traditional dress riding behind the women. And they would stop, sort of, each little house would have their own party with little food and beers, of course. Of course, I didn't stop at any. I kept going. And but you would stop and they'd bring you in. You'd eat food and drink a couple beers and then head to the next place, and they'd call you in. And this went on for this little small town. So, for example, I don't know the little horse story, but it's a little horse. And this was an example of, this was across the street from a church. They had a table set up with refreshments and water and other libations. And then it passed by.
That's pretty cool. This is on my bucket list. I've heard a lot about this trail, and something that I want to do.
It's amazing.
I know a lot of people here have been to that. Yeah, there she is.
Yep. Yeah, it's amazing.
Cool. So where'd you go from there?
So I finished the Camino. So I was in Santiago in July. And from there, I flew back home to Colorado, did some fly fishing, did some sporting clay shooting. And then Iceland was the next trip.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So big 2024 for you, huh?
Big 2024. Yeah, it's not even done yet.
Yeah.
So we went up to Iceland. So the boat left New York City. It did some work off in the North Atlantic, ended up in Reykjavik. I joined it there. One of the first things I did when I got on board was a gravity tie. So we have the gravimeter on board that measures gravity, of course. But you have to tie that into a local reference station to make sure the meter hasn't drifted over time. So these reference stations are known surveyed gravity stations around the world. And you go find them. You set a box up on top of them. I think we have a picture. It's next to the main church here in Reykjavik. There's a little box we take. And essentially what we do is we transfer that known reading next to the vessel on the pier. So we have a known reading on land somewhere. We transfer that to the pier, and then we can compare the readings that we're getting from the gravimeter on board the boat to the known reading on the pier. And we can see over time what that drift looks like. And when the scientists, when they process that data, they can look at that before and after reading to then process in, whatever drift we had. So the good thing about it is you usually go to some amazing locations to do these gravity ties.
And how good is this gravity tie? Like how far do you have to be? Because you can't drive the boat right up to wherever this reference point is.
No, and that's the beauty of this little instrument that we use. So the reference point can be 100 miles away, and you essentially establish a new reference point next to the pier of the boat. So yeah,
Interesting.
yeah. So
And that's just measuring the acceleration due to gravity.
That's
or,
right.
Or whatever.
Yep.
Isn't it an accelerometer? What kind of instrument is this?
Yeah, that little box. I'm not quite sure what it is. It must be some sort of accelerometer. I'm not really sure actually, but yeah.
So a highly accurate accelerometer.
Highly
Or-
accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah. We send it in every couple of years to get calibrated. It's the real deal. Yeah. It looks like it was on the Apollo mission. It looks ancient, but it works.
Still
just
works?
Fine. It works just fine.
Yeah.
So we were next to the the Hallsgrim Kirkja church, the main sort of church that looks like Odin built it in Reykjavik. And then we sailed out. So we went.
Who are these two people?
Oh yeah, that's every great story needs to have the beautiful leading lady, the model, and that's my girlfriend. So after we did the work in Iceland, she came out and we did a couple days around the island. We did the sort of the famous golden circle there in Iceland. We went to quite a few different waterfalls.
She wasn't on board for the Camino, though?
She wasn't on board. No. She wasn't with me for the Camino. She just came to Iceland. Yeah. So this is Brewer. So the previous waterfall was Brewer Foss. That's it. Yeah. So we saw that, and the other one was Salania Foss or something like that. I'm not fluent in Icelandic.
Sure.
But a couple glaciers we saw, and yeah. So the work we did, there's a couple pictures a little bit a while ago. The work we did was a couple 100 miles south of Iceland. It was on the ridge there, and they were looking at the mantle plume activity. Sort of the activity sort of comes and goes over time, and they can almost look at it like how a forester would look at a tree ring. So that new oceanic crust. So they can see when it was really active and when it was not so active. So what we did was we deployed some. Yep, that's our work area there in purple, just south of the island. So we deployed some. Oh, that's the church there. Yeah. So that's our little box set up next to the church. Yes,
It's
yes.
very Icelandic.
It's very Icelandic, yeah. Odin and Thor need to be,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly right, yeah. Yeah, so that picture there shows, so that's the main deck of the Marcus G. Langseth. We have our OBS set up on deck. So an OBS is an ocean bottom seismometer. And you had asked earlier about if you lose things, and these are some of the things we lose.
So this is a seismometer that's attached to the ocean floor.
That's right, yep.
So, and then it's got a buoy, like a crab trap or something like that.
Nope.
And,
Nope.
what?
So you as a researcher, you want to study a certain area of the ocean floor. You come up with a deployment plan. Let's say we want to OBS every 20 kilometers in sort of a grid or even 50 kilometers. So what we do is we sail over that point and we just drop them. So we lift them up with the A-frame, drop them over, quick release, and they just settle down to the bottom. And then we survey them in with an acoustic transponder on board the boat. We do sort of a Pac-Man type pattern, and with that triangulation, we can get the position of the
You know
OBS
where they
on the bottom.
landed.
Exactly. Yep.
So then how do you retrieve them?
So they have a weight. So it's a metal grid weight that's just going to rust away in the end. And we sail to them with that same 12 kilohertz transponder. We can dial in the frequency for that acoustic unit on the OBS, and we can talk to it. We can send a command, hey, wake up, and then burn your burn wire or burn your wire. And they have these wires that once a current hits it, after so long it burns, and then it releases from the anchor, and it floats to surface. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it comes up 40 meters a minute.
Did you ever get hit by it?
No. No, so the captains are very good. They look at the ADCP, the current profiler, and we usually stand off down current a couple kilometers. When it pops to surface, 40 meters a minute, so it could take a couple hours to come to surface. They have a flashing light beacon. They have also they transmit at a certain radio frequency that we tune into on board the boat, and we can pick up once it hits surface. We'll hear that radio frequency. It has so we have an RDF, a beacon on board the boat. I don't know if you had one in the Navy, but and then we can get a position and sort of a range, and then the boat sails to that OBS. But they're usually quite good, and after a couple OBSs, when they come to surface, the bridge officers, they have a little bet going of who can be the closest and things like that. So they're usually pretty good at it.
Closest without getting hit.
Closest without getting hit.
So when you lose these things, basically you go over there probably and tell it to pop, and it just doesn't come.
That's right. Yeah. Sometimes they implode. Sometimes they'll land not right. It just gear failure. Yeah, it happens. Yeah.
What percentage of those are lost?
It's not much. So in the U.S. fleet, they come from Woods Hole and Scripps are the two main providers. These were actually from an organization in the U.K. So all the scientists on board for this particular cruise were from the U.K. But it's modeled off what Scripps uses. Very good. They've been in service for a long time, 20, 30 years. They've perfected it right down to what they need to. So the percentage of lost, I don't know the exact number, but it's not much. It's
like 1 in 100? Like what's the order of magnitude?
1 in 50.
1 in 50?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because you don't really know why it failed.
That's right.
It just doesn't come back.
Yeah, that's right.
You don't get to analyze the failure, right?
No.
Yeah, you only get to see the ones that work.
No, I mean they go through quite a comprehensive check before we deploy them. But yeah. And on this job, we deployed it more than once. So we would deploy 40 of them. We'd get a line out. So we just saw a picture of the seismic source 1 or 2 pictures ago. So we would deploy 40 of them in a line. Yep, that's it there. And then once all 40 were down, we would deploy the seismic source. And if you remember, I was saying, so that's 2,000 psi, 6,600 cubic inches. There's 4 essentially big black floats that sit on top of the water, and they suspend the seismic source, so the air guns below that. And then once we deployed this, it takes about 4 hours. We would then sail over the top of the OBSs, and we would, every 50 meters, 100 meters, whatever it was, we would make that noise, and they would record that noise down on the bottom. So you would get, not only would you get reflection data, which is what you get with the streamer, but you get refraction data as well. So there's 2 types of waves that are made during a seismic event, P and S waves. So primary and shear, or compression waves. So, and with the OBSs on the bottom, you can record both types.
So I got a question. How fast can this thing fire? Like how many shots per minute or whatever?
It's a good question. Yep. So it all comes down to the refill time. Mm-hmm. So how fast can we refill the air guns back up to the 2,000 psi? And that's down to the type of compressors you have, what type of air bank you have on board the boat.
So what do you got?
Well, so the compressors are big. Yeah. So we can do about 15 seconds in between shots.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what's that volume? What did you say it was?
6,600 cubic inches.
Can you put that in like cubic feet?
Oh, wow, I don't know.
Like a scuba tank's like what? 80 scuba people? What's a 80, 120?
Yeah,
So that's cubic feet. So how many scuba tanks are you blowing?
I'm not sure. Yeah.
Let's do the math. You can
Someone-
get back to us. Someone with a
grab the
calculator out
phone.
there. Yeah.
But it's a lot. I mean, it's a.
But it looks like a large volume. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, when they go off, you see the white foam from the boat. Yeah, but because we are using sort of an air source, we have a specialized group of people on board. They're called PSOs, Protected Species Observers. So anytime that we have seismic, we have a dedicated group of PSOs or wildlife biologists that come on board the boat, and we prevent and mitigate any interference with whales, dolphins, seabirds, turtles. So we have a certain set of procedures that we have to follow. And if you remember when we did the flyover of the vessel, there was one sort of tower right in the center. So they'll work up on that tower with binoculars. And we also tow a cable behind us, which is called PAM, Passive Acoustic Monitoring. And that's all involved just so that we can monitor the sea. And if a certain whale or dolphin gets within a radius, we then shut down the seismic source so we don't have any interference, sort of the natural habitat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I got to ask that position, the PSO,
Yep.
probably didn't always exist.
No,
Did you ever see like if you ever you're at Tonopah, that solar generating station? They put that big solar generating station. They found out they were killing a lot of birds.
Yep.
With this system, are you aware of any incidents that happened where like they were lighting it off and like someone came behind and like, oh no.
No.
We should probably watch out for this.
Yeah. No, there's been known verified cases of any harm. Now, I'm sure Greenpeace is probably going to argue with me, but as far as I know, there's been no verifiable case of something being harmed by the seismic source. And we've been doing it, the oil and gas industry, close to 20 years now, maybe even a bit more. So
Does the oil and gas industry run those PSOs?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah?
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, they'll have.
Call them CYAs.
Yeah. No. I mean, it's a thing. Yeah. I mean, maybe 25 years ago there was some resistance when they first came on board.
How often do you get shut down?
It depends where we work. So in some areas it can be a lot more. So we did a couple years ago. We did a job off the west coast of Mexico, and we had quite a few sea turtles in the area. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, 3-4 times a day we would have to stop, and so there's a couple different ways that you can handle it. If you don't want any holes in your data, you can circle the boat, but it takes about from where you shut down to where you come back onto line. It takes about 7 hours. So that's a long time. That's a long time. Yep.
It's a big turn.
That's a big
because
turn.
you got that 9-mile cable, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Or you can slow the boat down as much as you can to still maintain streamer stability, and you have a hole. So yeah.
Interesting.
Yep.
So tell us about Lithuania and the dry dock.
Yeah. So after the work we did in Iceland, the boat went back to Reykjavik, and then from there it sailed to dry dock. So every several years, a boat has to go dry. They need to do hull inspections, maybe maintenance on the prop, the rudder, et cetera, pull the shafts, have a look at that. And so we went to Lithuania for that, Klaipėda. It's a beautiful town. It's the most northern town there in the Baltic that's ice-free all winter. And we did about a month there. So we were dry. They did, obviously, hull maintenance, but also they blasted the hull, repainted it, anti-fouling on it. And while they were doing that, we were doing a bunch of other work inside the boat. So just as much as we could do during that time. A lot of a honey to-do list, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was there about 10 days, 2 weeks almost, before I left. I came back home, back to Colorado and Michigan, to go hunting, little sporting clays, little deer hunting in Michigan. I'm a bow hunter, so I was doing that. I don't know if you know, but in Michigan they have a special tradition. It's called the buck pole. So you remember sort of the old black and white photos of the guys out hunting? They would have the log tied across a couple trees, and they'd have the deer or the elk hung up in the trees. Well, the reason they did that obviously was, once it was field dressed, they didn't want the meat to spoil, so they would hang it. And that tradition still lives on in Michigan. Yep, there's some pictures of bow hunting and some sporting clays. And opening day of gun season, which some schools even have off in Michigan, you go to the buck pole. You kick the dirt, point at the buck, yeah, that's mine. Or you don't point at the buck and don't say anything to anybody, any of your friends.
Don't post the pictures?
Don't post the pictures, yeah. And yeah, so it's a big thing. I think there's a picture of it coming up here in a picture or two, shows the buck pole. But
Yeah.
yeah, there it is. Yeah, it's a thing in Michigan. It's a thing.
That's a Michigan thing, huh?
That's a Michigan thing, yeah, yeah. Wisconsin may claim it, but
Very cool. It looks cold. This is like summertime, isn't it?
no, I mean, it's gun season's November 15th in Michigan. So,
November 15th?
yeah.
So a little bit later.
Yeah, a little bit later. Yeah. That's a fun time. Yeah. And then after sort of the holidays in Michigan and Colorado and enjoying life, back to sea. So this time we were back to Cape Verde. So this is late November again. So the vessel sailed from Lithuania. They went through, I don't remember the name of it now, but there's a canal that goes in Germany and cuts sort of the peninsula with Denmark. What is it? Kiel. Yep. So we all know the Panama and the Suez. So the vessel went through that and then down back to Cape Verde, where I joined the boat again, and new scientists, new food, new provisions. And we went down, so around the equator, between Brazil and Africa, we were over a transform fault, which is a similar fault to the San Andreas, and we were doing some work there. So we deployed OBSs again, we deployed the streamer again, and we went to work. So a little, obviously we all want it to go well. We have a saying in seismic that boring seismic is good seismic, because that's the best data. But we had a little tension, so it was around midnight. The tension on the streamer went high, so we have a tension meter that records the tension of what we're pulling, and we have safe working loads and whatnot. So it went high. We slowed the boat down right away, as much as we could still keep sort of mobility through the water, that nothing would collapse. And the tension still stayed high on the streamer, so we started to recover. It took us about 20 hours to recover the streamer because of the tensions that we were seeing. We get to the end of the streamer, and we had a FAD that we had caught. So FAD is called it's a fish attractant device or a fish aggregator device. And in some parts of the world, what they do is, you can see it in the picture here, sort of, you can see it on surface, that orange frame would be our tail buoy that I talked about before. And the white trailing line in the water is the net from the FAD. So what they do is, the local fishermen will make a platform. Some are a little bit fancier than others. This one had a light and GPS on it. And then they have some sort of a structure that hangs down below the platform, whether it's net in this case. I've seen palm fronds. I've seen quite a few different examples. And the idea is that attracts the small fish, which attracts the big fish, and the fishermen then can fish off that. So we were able to get it undone. There was some tension in the air, both on the streamer and also with nerves. But we were able to get it off. Nothing got damaged. It was done safely, of course. And we left the FAD to float free so the fishermen can come get their gear. We went up current of that, deployed the gear again. It took us about 12 to 16 hours to get it back out. Wow. And we went back into production. Yeah. So I mentioned earlier about the digibirds, which controls the streamer in the water column.
Right.
So in the bottom picture here, you can see a digibird. And so the digibird is on top of the streamer. It's that red and white sort of contraption. And below that, you have an SRD, which is a streamer recovery device. So think of a big airbag, a big pillow. If the streamer breaks free, hopefully it doesn't, it sinks down, and once it gets to a certain depth, these will go off and then bring the streamer back to surface.
So you don't lose the expensive equipment.
Yeah, we don't lose the expensive equipment.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
One of the fun things that I do when I'm offshore, so I have this little thing called the Desk to Deck, and it's a little outreach program I try to do with the kids for STEM. So this is actually my sister's class. She's a 5th grade teacher in Michigan. So I have it all set up. I can talk to them while we're at sea.
Starlink's great, huh?
Starlink's great. It's much better than it was 10, 15 years ago, that's for sure. So I have little videos we watch. I talk to them from the winch booth so I can show them the ocean, do some Q&A with the class. And so I've done it with multiple classes in Michigan now. It's a fun time to give back and show that people who work offshore or in this environment or who do any type of adventuring, that you don't have to be an astronaut with 5 PhDs, then anybody can do it. You just have to want to.
That's super cool.
Yeah. One last little thing as we were coming back to Cape Verde. So probably some people know, but so as we were sailing north, so this is around Christmas time now, December 19th, 20th. This was a 5-day sail up from where we were working back to the Cape Verde Islands. So people started to talk about Christmas plans and flights and getting a little bit nervous, Flights always get canceled around Christmas time. So as we started getting farther north, we saw a haze in the air. It was almost like fog at first. Well, it didn't turn out to be fog. It was the famous bruma seca, which in Portuguese is a dry mist. So it's the sand that gets blown off of the Sahara there and gets blown out in the Atlantic and even as far down as the Amazon rainforest. And it's a real fine mist. You can see it in the pictures. That's a hazy day. It should be bright blue skies there. And some other sort of satellite pictures, you can see it. And a little bit of anticipation with how many flights were going to get canceled. There was already multiple flights canceled. Luckily, it was only a day, and we were able to get out, fly up to Lisbon, and then everybody sort of separated from there and went their own way and celebrated Christmas with their families. Yeah.
Stuff like that's amazing when you kind of realize the scale, trying to comprehend the scale of the world, right? Like this sand blew across the Atlantic.
It's crazy. It's crazy to think. Yep. Yeah.
Very good. That's quite a year, man. Well, let's open it up to questions real quick.
Okay.
I'm sure people have some. We covered a lot.
Yeah, a lot.
Right.
A lot of stuff.
That was a big 2024.
A lot of
very
stuff.
cool 2024.
My question is on crew. By the way, I get burned out after 3 to 5 days.
Yeah.
So my trip around Catalina, 5 days max. My question is on crew. Are any of these excursions, well, more than excursions, these long-term, half year, are they in the course catalog where if I'm a student and I'm thinking of oceanography or one of these things that I could join up as a class credit, or is it just, top scientists and professionals doing, their master's and PhD?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. So there's many different opportunities to join a research boat. So as I mentioned before, a professor or a researcher will put that proposal into the NSF, and part of that proposal is to bring new scientists involved or on the cruise. So we see anybody from undergraduates up to postdocs, PhDs. And there are different opportunities as well. So UNOLS has that mate internship program. There are different outreach programs that bring people on board. The private vessels, OET, the Nautilus, the Falcor, they'll do things to bring people on board as well. So there's many opportunities to sort of different paths to be able to find yourself on a boat. Crew-wise, we'll have about 20-ish marine crew. It depends on the
These are
cruise.
professional mariners.
Professional
like they have
mariners,
some sort of
certifications
yeah.
in the union. Yeah, anybody from, so it goes captain, your bridge officers, chief engineer, your first engineer, second engineer, third engineer. You'll have oilers who also work in the engine room. You'll have ABs, able-bodied seamen, who work on the deck, and OS, ordinary seamen, who work on the deck as well.
What's the difference between an AB and an OS?
Time at sea.
Okay.
Yeah, experience and time at sea.
So if you're able-bodied?
That's so it's OS, AB, and bosun.
Okay.
Yep. So time at sea. And then, 20-ish professional mariners. There will be, it depends on the cruise, 4 to 12 technicians. And then the rest will be science party. 45-ish people is sort of our max, is what we can handle based on beds.
And you said the technicians, the group that you work with is like anywhere between 1 for a transit and like 8.
12 for like a big seismic job.
Okay.
Yep. And if we have 12, then we have less scientists.
Yeah.
So
Back here.
Great presentation. My question is, when you were in West Africa in particular, did you ever have issues with piracy or other security concerns at sea?
Yeah, that's a good question. So working in South Africa, in Namibia, no, we didn't have that. But working in other places, other places they do. And when you do, so you do, obviously before we do any transit, there's a risk assessment that's done, part of our safety management system. And we look at the different sort of information based on the State Department and whatnot to assess that risk. If we're going to transit through or work in an area that is a high risk, we go into sort of different stages of hardening the vessel. Hardening the vessel means limiting access to what doors they can enter, all the way from that to razor wire along sort of the open decks to slow or deter someone from coming on board the vessel. And then, if it's back, 10, 12 years ago, sort of when it was really kicking up on the east side of Africa, they would even go into convoys. Now, in situations like that, if we don't have to put ourselves in that situation, if that means a longer transit, then of course that's what we would do. But that's all part of sort of the risk assessment and management that's done.
Never
before.
any active measures?
No. Never.
What's all that skeet shooting for, man?
No. No.
Over here.
Victor Vescovo, our speaker for NOAA, has a long-term project of mapping the ocean floor. Have you worked with his crew at all?
No, I haven't. So I know of him, but I haven't worked with his crew.
Yeah, you got to come to Night of Adventure.
Yeah.
I was jazzed to hear that when you had the water intrusion problem, you didn't just retrain the crew, like Rich said in the Navy solution. Don't do dumb things. You assumed people would do dumb things, and you re-engineered. You got rid of the door, right? Could you talk about that re-engineering and how much authorization it took to either? Because on a Navy ship, you can't just unbolt something or weld it over without a bunch more permission. And it sounds like you had the ability to make stuff safer without going higher.
Yeah. So it depends on the scale. If it's something smaller that the crew can accomplish themselves, that's what we'll do. We'll do some re-engineering, maybe change the procedure or the process to be able to sort of take out any potential human impact. But for something like that, that's on the vessel safety plan. That's a little bit more of a larger scale plan. So that happened before we went to Lithuania for dry dock. So we had assessed it on board. The office of Marine Operations in Lamont Doherty had a look at it, and we came to the conclusion that potentially the best solution moving forward, so we don't have that happen again, is to have that new door put in. So in the end, we removed a door that we never used and put a door in that we now use all the time. So it was a win-win in every aspect.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's interesting because you do have a bunch of people like, okay, so like it's seamanship 101, like you leave the hatch how you found it.
Yeah.
Right? If the hatch was closed,
Yep.
you close it.
Absolutely.
If it's open, you leave it open, right? Unless you absolutely know that that's wrong.
Sure. Sure.
But we're working with a bunch of scientists. Yeah, I don't know what they're doing,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
They're not able-bodied or even ordinary.
Yeah. They're unique.
Yeah.
They're unique. Yeah, I mean, and some of it comes down to just experience. We'll have 19-year-old undergraduates on board that have never been anything like this in their life before.
So the engineering solution is the right solution.
It's the right solution.
Yeah.
Yep. Take it out of their hands.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm a big fan of engineering solutions.
It's a good one.
As
Yep.
opposed to training. It's
Yep.
a lot easier.
Yeah, and and like I say, so it's part of our safety management system. It's quite good.
There we go. One back here.
I actually had two questions. One is, you mentioned 27% of the seafloors mapped. Is that 20% fairly dispersed around the globe, or is it concentrated in certain areas? And then, just my second question, when you do a seismic reading, what is the area you get for one pulse, or if that's the right way to say it?
So the concentration, is definitely different. So anywhere along the coastlines, the Gulf of Mexico, for example, has been mapped time after time after time. But out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, there's hardly any.
Major shipping lanes.
Major shipping lanes.
Yeah.
Any type of submarine route, we probably don't see that data. But any type of like major scientific points of interest are also mapped quite heavy. So you look at different places in the Pacific, and you'll see there'll be no fuzziness because for whatever reason a fault system is there, and there will be tons of mapping done. But you can also look, and there'll be nothing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Seismic resolution. So for the 2D or one streamer, it's essentially you're looking at one cross section of the ocean. So there's not really like a width aspect that people talk about. It's more depth. Now, when you do a 3D survey, which is more than one streamer, so on our vessel we can do 4, and then you do get some width. So each streamer has a separation of 150 meters, and from there you just have to play with the angles. So you have the sources in the middle, so you're not going to have a full, 650? 550. So you're not going to have a full 550. It's going to be less based on the angle of the streamer.
Okay.
But so similar to like a multi-beam type survey, you line it up so when you're basically mowing the grass. You don't want to miss any grass in between. So the lines are much closer. Your sail lines are much closer to be able to get that full illumination of the subsurface. But like anything, the closer your lines are is a longer time to make that transit. So your actual swath itself is going to be quite small for your time.
So what is the width of one of these swaths? I mean, I know it's depth dependent, but
Yeah. So
give
it's
us an example.
so the streamer separation is 150 meters, and there's 4 streamers. So it's 450 meters from streamer to streamer.
that's all you get off the bottom?
That's all you get. Yep.
Oh,
and
wow.
you make that zigzag back and forth. Yep. So it's called binning.
And then what about the forward progress? Because you get a boom every 15 seconds is what you said.
So that's down to resolution. So what they want geophysically for what they're going to do.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a little bit of some frequency. It's called a notch frequency, and what you can accomplish for the depth of investigation that you want to see. But that's a little bit more
Interesting.
detailed. Yeah.
Right here.
When you're on a research vessel, how much time do you have, or what percentage of time are you actually working, and how much time do you think you might have some leisure?
So we work 12 hours on, 12 hours off, the technicians. So that's noon to midnight or midnight to noon. The Marine crew does watches. So they'll do, for example, like the bridge officers, they'll do a 4-hour watch. So they'll do 12 to 4 or noon to 4, midnight to 4, and then they'll usually have another 4 hours of sort of maintenance time that they can do.
So you're 12 on, 12 off for like,
5 weeks.
jeez.
Yeah.
That
12
sucks.
on.
Sorry.
Once you get into it, it's okay because there's nothing else to do. You're not gonna
That's
try
true.
to run to the grocery store.
Yeah.
We have a small gym on board.
I get it.
That we can go up and do the treadmill, do the rowing machine, some weights. We have a little library on board as well for a little quiet space. Of course, there's Wi-Fi.
You ever dog the watches so you're not always
We do no.
on the 12 on? Like it's hard to do 12 on, 12 off. Basically, I got to skip one or double up.
No, that's what we do. 12 and 12. Yeah.
So whoever starts at the night is going to end at the night?
We usually, we talk about it beforehand. Hey, what would you prefer? Would you like to do nights or days today? Oh, you know what? My family's doing so and so. I'd rather have nights. So then that person does midnight to noon, and then for that duration. Now, when you get into port, we usually switch to days. Everybody works together. You have to share cabins. So most cabins on board the boat are 2 bunks. So it's bunk beds. But for example, in our situation, when I'm working my 12 hours, the other person will then have the cabin. So you don't overlap, or you're not certainly
But not the rack.
Certainly not hot bunking. No, not
Okay,
hot
well,
bunking. Yeah,
yeah, I never know.
Yeah. But that's normally how it works.
Cool.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you, Cody. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Very cool year. Sounded like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, thank you. Yep.
Thank you all for joining us at Adventures Club tonight. We'll see you next week.